Tom Cruise really is the savior of cinema.
And action! Let's see the movie.
Hey guys, welcome back to the video. I just got out of watching my most anticipated movie of 2023, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, and in this video I'm going to be giving you guys my spoiler-free review of the movie. I am beyond excited to talk about this movie. Let me know what you guys thought about the movie in the comments down below, and if you want to see me do a full spoiler review on the entire movie, let me know by dropping a like rating, and also hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my other movie or TV show reviews, reactions, or breakdowns. And before we get into my review, I wanted to share a few really cool goodies they gave us before the early screening. Firstly, they gave us this really cool IMF pin that I absolutely love, as well as this amazing Dead Reckoning limited edition poster. But with that out of the way, let's get into it, talking about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. And I think the first thing we have to talk about is the stunts in this movie, because that's what the Mission Impossible franchise is all about. And I love that about it. Before I get into my specific thoughts, I want to go through all of the big stunt sequences in this movie. Again, I'm not getting into spoilers about the outcome of these fight scenes or anything like that, but you have that desert fight scene in the very beginning of the movie, which is on a technical level just absolutely brilliant. There's sand, there's wind, the clothing and the scenery is absolutely amazing. It's a great starting point for the story. And again, it just launches us right into it. And then there's the car chase scene in Rome. If you guys have seen, there's so many behind the scenes clips of this fight, and it is just absolutely amazing. It doesn't feature motorcycles as much as I thought it was going to, but they switch around cars, they go to some amazing locations. It is just so well executed. And during that entire car chase sequence, my friend and I would look at the screen, look at each other, smile a little bit, and then look back at the screen, and then look back at each other and then smile a little bit, and then look at the screen and then look at each other and then smile a little bit, and repeat that throughout the entirety of this car chase sequence in Rome. It is just an absolute beauty, from the way it's shot, the different angles, the wides, and also the close-ups, the technical elements. Everything is at level 1000 here. Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise are putting their all into each and every one of these stunt sequences, and the car chase sequence lasts so long, but the thing is, it's engaging from beginning to the end. My only problem with John Wick 4, which is, again, one of the best action movies of all time in my opinion, is that I feel like some of the action sequences last way too long. Like, we get it, John Wick is gonna kill more people. This makes me to the next sequence in Rome, which is the hand-to-hand combat scene, and I can't talk about this too much because it's a very pivotal moment in terms of character stuff, and I just don't want to spoil it, but it's a very pivotal moment. And in that, the way this scene is captured, this hand-to-hand combat scene, and the way it's paced, it feels different than everything else in this movie, and in a very good way. This feels like the most drawn out and honestly the most rewarding sequence out of every single one of the ones in this movie. And at times it does feel a little bit too stylish, but at the same time, it does deliver on that substance. And then we get to, obviously, the big, massive action sequence that they marketed for this movie, which was the cliff jump, where Tom Cruise rides a whole motorcycle off of a cliff and then parachutes and lands inside of a train. That is just an absolutely insane sequence, and just on a tech level, stunt level, it is all perfect. And then after that, of course, you have the main final act of the movie, which takes place on top of a moving train, which is captured, again, very well. It is an absolutely insane stunt. And then the final train drop sequence, which was shown in a bunch of behind the scenes clips, where they actually dropped the front of a train into a massive pit, and it's absolutely exhilarating the way that they capture it and then share it to the audience. But within all of these stunts, and again, I want to preface by saying I think they're all absolutely amazing, captured really well, and it's so much fun where you're sitting in a theater and you just have a big fat smile on your face. You're so giddy at everything that's happening. But my only problem with the stunts, and why I think this movie does fall a little bit under Mission Impossible Fallout at this current moment in time. I'm rewatching the movie and I'll be doing a full ranking of the Mission Impossible franchise on the channel, so subscribe so you don't miss that. But I think the way that Mission Impossible Fallout captures the stunts is a little bit better. So for example, I think that hand-to-hand scene in Rome is absolutely amazing. But the way that the bathroom scene looks in Fallout is a little bit more appealing to me than the hand-to-hand combat scene in Rome. And another one, the big stunt of Mission Impossible Fallout, in my opinion, is obviously that halo diving sequence. And in this one, it's the cliff jump. But the cliff jump, the way that it's shot, the angles that it's used, just the way that it looks in, at least in broad daylight, it's not nearly as appealing as the Halo jump sequence where you have the illumination of Tom Cruise's face mask. You hear the oxygen through his and Henry Cavill's suits as they're jumping out of the plane. The exhilaration of Henry Cavill's suit malfunctioning and the oxygen tank being ripped off and Tom Cruise having to switch his tank to Henry Cavill's. You don't have those moments in this movie, at least in my opinion, where you have that exhilarating feeling within that massive stunt sequence through a visual element. Now, on the other end, I will say the smallest moments in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning felt like they had the most tension in the entire world. And that's where I want to get into talking about the story of this movie. Right out of the gate, this movie is a chunky 2 hours and 45 minutes. It's a near 3-hour film, right? And with action movies, it's really difficult to, I feel like, keep an audience really engaged between the action sequences. But one of the first big tense sequences in the movie is just characters walking around. It's not even that intense of an action sequence, but it felt like my heart was pounding out of my chest, and my friend and I would look back at each other and we were just in absolute awe of being this intense over a sequence where there was no real action even happening. How is this movie gonna make us feel when we know Tom Cruise is about to jump off of a cliff? This movie is also very exposition heavy. It's a very clunky movie in terms of how much information is given out. But I think the fact that this film is nearly 3 hours long really helps with that because it's paced really well. I think also what made the exposition so engaging was the way that they shot it, because it was like always at these weird close-up angles, and whether the composition was a character's face on one side of the screen or them in the middle or them on the other side of the screen, or an undershot, an overshot, a very angled side of their face, or a rack focus to someone talking behind, it always felt unique. It always felt different. And honestly, it always felt inventive. And I think Christopher McQuarrie, who also wrote the screenplay but also directed the movie, and Tom Cruise both knew that if you're gonna set up a part 2, right? And I'll talk about the story stuff later, but if you're gonna set up a part 2, you need to obviously set up good and engaging and actually interesting high-stakes story in the first part. So how do you do that? Obviously, you have a lot of exposition, but you actually add a different level of creative flair to it. I will say Mission Impossible Fallout never had that. This feels like a very stylized version of Fallout because the story is much deeper, it's much more intricate, and honestly, the stakes are just much higher. I think the villain of this movie is also so well aided by the fact that it is a part 1 and part 2. I'm not gonna get into specifics about the final plan because I feel like that wasn't really shown in trailers, but the main villain of this movie, or the main objective, is to capture something, but the main villain is this like AI entity type of thing. And the thing is, our characters are rogue in this movie, like they were rogue in Fallout, like they were rogue in Rogue Nation. But the thing is, they are rogue from the beginning of this movie. They are rogue from just not even knowing what they're trying to capture. They're just trying to capture whatever it is to save the world from they don't even know until the end of the film. And I think that is such a smart and amazing way to write a screenplay for a part 1, because you can accomplish something in part 1 and keeping the audience knowing what the overall bigger picture is, but keeping our characters in the dark, it makes it a lot easier to sympathize with the fact that, yeah, we didn't get to that final layer. We didn't get to the final villain, but we also do understand that this item, this object, this key is what we need to get there, and in the second movie we will. This movie left me so satisfied, and I think it's because it's so exposition heavy, it's so action heavy, it's so story heavy, but at the end of the day, everything just clicks. I think a big thing to that click of this movie is the cast as well. I mean, you have Tom Cruise, the classic action star of our generation, but also Haley Atwell joins the entire group for this movie. Rebecca Ferguson is back, Vanessa Kirby, Palm Clinton, I'm definitely pronouncing her name wrong, but she's a new addition to the franchise and she is so awesome. The villain, Isaiah Morales, is also really great, and obviously Simon Pegg and Ving Rhames, I think that's how you pronounce his name, they're also back in this franchise, and everything clicks. Every one of these actors, every one of these performances fits so well with one another, and it's like this franchise just understands what it's good at. Yes, it gives us these massive expositions, this insanely high stakes story, this villain that's absolutely insane, these massive stunts, but it also knows that these characters are inherently funny. They understand the situation that they're in. Obviously, they know when it's time to get serious, but every single joke in this movie hits. My entire theater was laughing. Everyone was having a good time. We knew it was end of the world stakes, but the way that these characters have been made so personal to us through the entire franchise still stands here, and it's never overshadowed by anything else. Now, there are a few final miscellaneous things I want to talk about, one of them being the score of this movie. I mean, the Mission Impossible theme is one of the most iconic themes known to mankind, but also, I did want to point out there's this one sequence in the movie, I think it's during the hand-to-hand fight scene in Rome, where they just, it feels like they smash the deep end of a keyboard, and it just makes the most eerie and ominous and depressing and dark sound that I've ever heard. And I just looked over at my friend, and I just had, my mouth was on the ground, my jaw dropped. I was like, it just feels like everything is done. Like, it felt like the end of the world at that moment. I think it was because of the score. Obviously, the story was great, the moment was great, the acting was great, all of that was amazing. But it was the score that really made me feel that final push of emotion. And then the final thing is, obviously, this is a part 1 of 2. I am so excited for part 2. Part 2 is now my most anticipated movie for 2024, I'm guessing. Because this movie, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, was my most anticipated movie of 2023. And I've officially seen it, and I can say it lives up to all of my expectations. I expected it to be one of the best movies of the year, and it's exactly that. I'm not sure exactly where it falls in my ranking for the year. It's easily top 3. It's easily top 5 action movies of all time. This movie is absolutely phenomenal, and you need to watch it on the biggest screen possible. As of right now, I'm giving Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 a 9 out of 10. And I'm rewatching this movie in, I think, 2 days, and expect that to be bumped up to a 9.5 out of 10, because again, this is one of the greatest action movies I've ever seen. But guys, that wraps up my spoiler-free thoughts on Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Again, let me know what you guys thought of this movie in the comments down below. And if you want me to do a spoiler review on the movie, let me know by liking this video and subscribe so you don't miss any time I upload a new video or I go live. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.